I stepped out of my car and gazed up at the abandoned house, its towering spires and turrets reaching towards the moon like skeletal fingers. I had received a distress call from a group of college students who had dared to explore this notorious place, rumored to be cursed. Now they were trapped, and I was their only hope. As I entered the house, a chill ran down my spine. The air inside was heavy with the scent of decay and rot. I called out, my voice echoing off the walls. "Hello? Is anyone here?" A faint reply came from upstairs. Help us!" I rushed up the creaking stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The students huddled together in a room, their eyes wide with fear. "We can't get out," one of them whispered. "The doors won't open." I tried the doors, but they were stuck fast. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. The students screamed as I fumbled for my flashlight. The beam of light revealed a sight that made my blood run cold. The walls were covered in ancient symbols, pulsing with a malevolent energy. And then I saw it. A figure, tall and imposing, standing in the corner of the room. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and I felt its gaze upon me. I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The figure began to move towards us, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable horror. The students screamed, their voices drowned out by the sound of my own heartbeat. I tried to raise my hands, but they were frozen in terror. The figure loomed closer, its eyes burning with an evil intensity. And then, everything went black. When I came to, I was lying outside the house, the students scattered around me. We stumbled back to our cars, not stopping until we were far away from that accursed place. But the horror didn't end there. I began to experience strange visions, the symbol-covered walls etched into my mind. And then, the figure appeared in my dreams, its eyes burning with an eternal hatred. I knew then that I had brought something back with me from that house, something that would haunt me forever. As the days passed, the visions grew stronger, more vivid. I couldn't shake the feeling that the figure was watching me, waiting for me to return to that house. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew the truth. One night, I received a mysterious package with no return address. Inside, I found a small ornate box with a symbol etched onto its lid, the same symbol that covered the walls of the abandoned house. I knew then that I had to go back. The figure was calling to me, drawing me back to that place of unspeakable horror. I packed my bags, said goodbye to my friends and family, and set off towards the house. As I approached, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. The house loomed before me, its windows like empty eyes staring back. I steeled myself and stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and I could feel the weight of the symbol-covered walls bearing down upon me. I knew I was being led deeper into the heart of the house, further into the depths of madness. And then I saw it. The figure, standing in the center of the room, its eyes burning with an otherworldly intensity. I tried to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The figure began to speak, its voice like a rusty gate creaking in the wind. "You should not have come here," it said. "Now, you will never leave." As the darkness closed in around me, I realized that I was trapped in a living nightmare, forever bound to the horror of that abandoned house. The figure began to laugh, a sound that was like 1,000 screams echoing through my mind. I felt my sanity begin to slip, my grip on reality tenuous at best. Suddenly, the room was filled with visions of the past, images of the family that once lived in the house. I saw them laughing, smiling, but their eyes were black as coal. I saw them performing dark rituals, summoning something ancient and evil. The visions faded, and I was left standing alone in the room. The figure was gone, but I knew I wasn't alone. I could feel eyes upon me, watching me. I stumbled through the house, desperate to find a way out. But every door led to more hallways, more rooms. I was trapped in a maze of horrors. And then I saw it. A door hidden behind a tattered curtain. I pushed it open, and a warm light spilled out. I stumbled through the doorway into a room filled with old furniture and dusty antiques, but it was the photograph on the mantel that caught my attention. A family of 4 smiled back at me, their eyes black as coal. I knew then that I had stumbled into the heart of the horror. The family's eyes seemed to follow me as I moved, their smiles growing wider. I knew I had to get out, but as I turned to leave, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there. The hand tightened its grip, and I felt myself being pulled back into the room. The last thing I saw was the family's photograph, their eyes burning with an otherworldly intensity. And then, everything went black. The next morning, police found my car parked outside the house, the engine still running. But I was never seen again. The house remained standing, a monolith to the horrors that lurked within its walls. And if you listen closely, on certain nights, you can still hear my screams. The house stood vacant for years, its grandeur and beauty slowly being consumed by the passing of time. But the horror that lurked within its walls never faded. People whispered of strange occurrences, of lights flickering in the windows, of screams echoing through the halls. They whispered of the family's curse, of the evil that had consumed them. But one stormy night, a young couple dared to enter the house, laughing and joking as they stepped inside. They explored the dusty rooms, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls, and then they stumbled upon the photograph. The family of four smiled back at them, their eyes black as coal. The couple froze, their laughter dying on their lips. As they turned to leave, they felt a hand on their shoulder. They spun around, but there was no one there. The hand tightened its grip, and they felt themselves being pulled back into the room. The next morning, police found their car parked outside the house, the engine still running, but they were never seen again. The house remained standing, a testament to the horrors that lurked within its walls. And if you listen closely, on certain nights, you can still hear their screams. The curse of the house continued, a never-ending cycle of horror and death. For in that house, the darkness never fades and the evil never dies. Years later, a brave paranormal investigator decided to explore the house, determined to uncover its secrets. But as she stepped inside, she felt the weight of the curse bearing down upon her. She tried to flee, but it was too late. The darkness consumed her, and she became the latest victim of the house's horror. And so the curse continues, a never-ending cycle of terror and death. For in that house, the horror never ends. The house remains standing, a monolith to the horrors that lurked within its walls. The locals avoided it, whispering tales of the cursed family and the unspeakable evil that dwelled within. But one day, a group of brave urban explorers decided to investigate the house, determined to uncover its secrets. They entered the house, laughing and joking, but their merriment was short-lived. As they explored the dusty rooms, they began to feel a creeping sense of dread. They stumbled upon the photograph, and the family's black eyes seemed to follow them as they moved. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the group into darkness. They heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the floor above. The group tried to flee, but the doors were stuck fast. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and then a figure appeared on the stairs. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and the group froze in terror. The figure began to move towards them, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable horror. One by one, the group members disappeared, never to be seen again. The last one remaining stumbled out of the house, traumatized and forever changed. The house remained standing, its curse still active, waiting for the next group of unsuspecting victims to dare enter its halls. And so, the cycle of horror continued, a never-ending testament to the evil that lurked within those walls. But the story doesn't end there. The last surviving member of the group, forever changed by the experience, became obsessed with uncovering the secrets of the house. She spent years researching, poring over ancient texts, and seeking out experts in the occult. And then she discovered the truth. The house was a portal, a gateway to a realm of unspeakable horror. The family had been mere puppets, controlled by an ancient evil that lurked beyond the veil. The house was a doorway, and those who entered were consumed by the darkness that lurked beyond. The survivor knew she had to act, to stop the curse before it was too late. But as she approached the house, she felt the weight of the curse bearing down upon her. Had she finally uncovered the secret to stopping the horror, or was she just the next victim in a never-ending cycle of terror? Only time would tell. As she approached the house, she felt an eerie sense of calm wash over her. She knew what she had to do, and she was determined to see it through. She entered the house, her heart pounding in her chest, and made her way to the room where the photograph hung. She took a deep breath and then, with a swift motion, she ripped the photograph from the wall. The house seemed to shudder, as if the very foundations were being shaken. The air grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and the survivor felt herself being pulled towards the portal. She knew she had to act fast to close the doorway before it was too late. She pulled out an ancient tome, bound in black leather, and began to read from its pages. The words were in a language she didn't understand, but she knew their power. She felt the energy building, growing in intensity as she spoke the words aloud. The house began to shake, the walls trembling with a fierce power. The survivor felt herself being lifted off the ground, suspended in mid-air by the sheer force of the energy. And then, in an instant, it was over. The house was silent, the energy dissipating as quickly as it had built. The survivor fell to the ground, gasping for breath. She knew she had done it, that she had closed the doorway and stopped the curse. But as she looked around, she saw something that made her blood run cold. The photograph, ripped from the wall, was now back in its place, the family's black eyes seeming to watch her with a malevolent glee. The curse was far from broken. It had simply evolved, adapted to her attempts to stop it. The survivor knew then that she would never be able to escape the house's horror, that she would be forever trapped in its cycle of terror. As she gazed upon the photograph, the family's eyes seemed to burn with an intense, otherworldly energy. The survivor felt herself being drawn into their black depths, her soul being pulled apart by an unseen force. She tried to scream, but her voice was silenced by some unseen power. Her body began to contort, twisting into impossible shapes as if manipulated by an invisible hand. The photograph began to change, the family's faces elongating into grotesque, inhuman visages. Their eyes grew larger, burning with an intense, hellish fire that seemed to pierce the survivor's very soul. And then, the unthinkable happened. The survivor's body began to merge with the photograph, her flesh stretching and contorting as she was absorbed into the image. Her screams were trapped forever, silenced by the curse as she became a permanent resident of the house's twisted, supernatural realm. The photograph was complete, the family's black eyes now burning with an intense, malevolent glee. The curse was fulfilled, and the house's horror would continue unabated, forever feeding on the souls of the damned. The last thing seen was the photograph hanging on the wall, the family's eyes burning with an eternal hellish fire, as the house seemed to whisper a haunting, horrific phrase: "The family is complete, and you're next."